Hi, Shaun. Thank you for joining today's conversation. How are you?
I'm doing great, Kathy. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. So today what I wanted to talk to you about was a case study for a transaction that we just closed. So I was hoping that you could share a high-level overview of the multi-location practice that we just sold.
Yes, this is a Arizona medical practice specializing in hormone replacement therapy, medical weight loss, and regenerative medicine. Approximately 95% of the revenue comes from hormone replacement therapy and medical weight loss. They have over 111,000 annual encounters per year and enjoy um, about 245 new patients per month. So pretty robust practice.
Absolutely. What would you say were the differences in the approach that we took to marketing this practice versus a smaller practice?
That's a great question, Kathy. The typically when we represent a medical practice, they have gross revenues between 1 million and 10 million dollars. This practice fell in the upper range of that scale. And when we go to market with a practice, typically we have an asking price. That is most common in the market. Most brokers handle it that way. But when you go to market with an asking price, you're setting a ceiling on the upper limit that a buyer will pay for a practice. And given this practice's market position, opportunity for national expansion, we decided for this particular practice, it didn't make sense to go to market with an asking price.
Okay. And then, if you wouldn't mind, could you share some of the types of buyers that showed interest in this listing and how they differed from the buyer pool for smaller practices?
Certainly. So for this practice, we received interest from entrepreneurial physician investors, synergistic buyers, search funds buyers, and private equity investors. And this is a very different buyer profile than what we typically see in smaller practices. In smaller practices, the buyer is typically either an individual physician, likely employed in corporate healthcare and looking to exit corporate healthcare. And
Hmm.
so they're seeking to have a better work environment and a better income stream. Or if it's not an individual physician buyer, then it would be a physician group looking to expand their market share.
Hmm. Okay, and I know you touched on this already about listing this particular practice without a price, and we did record a video of how that can be beneficial to the seller. But in this particular case, how did listing the practice without an asking price benefit the seller here?
Yes, this was a very attractive practice with a dominant market position, good profit margins, and a strong company culture. So we knew that the right buyer would place a premium on this opportunity. We just didn't know exactly how much of a premium they would place. And so we initially went under contract with the first buyer who fell within the target range of value that we had previously discussed and agreed upon with our client. But unfortunately, this buyer couldn't deliver on the agreed upon terms, and so we terminated that letter of intent.
Hmm.
Later, we accepted an offer from buyer number two, who wanted to acquire a platform within the healthcare wellness space. And buyer number two saw an opportunity different than the original buyer, and they actually paid a 30% premium to acquire this practice. The fit between the buyer and the seller was amazing, and our client is absolutely thrilled with the outcome.
It's so exciting.
So, Kathy, I have a few questions for you.
Sure.
So, how did the due diligence process compare to other transactions that you've worked on?
So this process was certainly more complex than some of the smaller transactions that we've managed. More parties were involved on the buyer's end to provide not only a complete financial analysis and quality of earnings, but also a market analysis. So they were actually researching the practice's online presence and determining the expansion potential. So there was really just a more in-depth review and analysis of the practice as it stands now, but also what it could look like for the buyer in the future. So certainly for me, managing the transaction once we go under contract, I really had to put on my project management hat and ensure that we were organized and structured in the way that we communicated both sides of the party. So our collaborative due diligence tracker was really essential in streamlining the process of requesting and sharing information, and also helped to answer those questions in real time versus sharing them in batches via email. Which can be quite cumbersome. So, really just making sure we had regular check ins on both sides enabled us to proactively discuss future milestones and expectations and make sure that that crucial alignment was intact for both sides.
Excellent. You did an amazing job with that, I want to say.
Thank you.
Were there any aspects of the closing process that were specific to this size of transaction?
Yeah, I would definitely say that the complexity and just facilitating and coordinating the various parties from both ends was really where the hours came into play. Making sure we were on schedule, getting the buyer and their respective teams everything they needed in a timely manner, getting questions answered quickly to not cause a cascading delay. So, from a bird's eye view, I think the tasks are relatively similar from executing the LOI to closing. So, due diligence process, transaction agreements, tracking those specific timelines outlined in the LOI, preparing for closing. But with this transaction, it was on a larger scale. And just due to the size of the practice and the savviness and experience the buyer group brought to the table, there was little room for error, which we took very seriously.
That was
So,
a great experience.
yes, it was. It was just bringing these two sides together and their excitement and helping them form this relationship. It made all the hours worth it. So I just really want to one last question for you and kind of get your overall take on the experience. You know, with a variety of sellers and buyers and deals, what do you attribute to the success of this particular transaction and the parties involved?
Yeah, I think really understanding what our client wanted to achieve, and then going and seeking the right fit to present to our client. We certainly screen out a lot of potential buyers, a lot of
Mhm.
interest in this opportunity to bring the right person forward. As these larger transactions are complex, it certainly requires a team approach to get the deal across the finish line. And I'm really grateful for the talented team that we have at Strategic Medical Brokers. It absolutely was a great experience, fantastic communication for our client and for the buyer. That certainly couldn't happen if you were, a one-person brokerage firm trying
Mhm.
to handle something like this.
Absolutely. I agree. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Shaun.
My pleasure, Kathy.
Take care.